It's May 1977. Star Wars hits theaters and explodes into a cultural supernova. And kids everywhere want more Star Wars. Yeah, there's just one problem. There are no toys. This is the story of how George Lucas and a small toy company from Ohio took a gamble and changed pop culture forever. This video is sponsored by CAS, Collector Archive Services. If you're thinking about archiving, grading, and displaying your vintage toys, CAS has you covered. Expert authentication, professional grading, and crystal clear cases that make your collection look museum ready. Head to their website now because for a limited time, get free 30-day turnaround on carded and box figures and pops. Use my code Padawan10 at checkout and get 10% off your order. That's Padawan10 for 10% off. Elevate your collection today with CAS. And now, back to our video. When George Lucas struck his deal with 20th Century Fox back in the mid-70s, most studios saw toy rights as, well, not much at all. They were usually tossed in with lunchboxes and sticker sheets, t-shirts and posters. But George Lucas, he had other ideas. He took a massive pay cut as director. Fox originally offered him a standard fee of $500,000 to direct. A very respectable amount in those days. But George Lucas famously declined the offer in exchange for one thing: complete control and ownership of merchandising. And the sequel rights. The complete creative and financial control of both of them. The executives over at Fox thought that they had outsmarted the young filmmaker. Toys? Sure, take the toys. And in those days, sequels weren't as common as these days, with The Godfather Part 2 being one of the most successful sequels in US history at that time. But Lucas, being a student and fan of Akira Kurosawa, who had successful sequels with Shenshiro Sugara, and Lucas, also being a friend of Godfather director Francis Ford Coppola, knew that the Star Wars story was beyond one movie. And his sights were set on the future of the film as a franchise. And this single clause in Lucas's contract with Fox in 1975 would reshape Hollywood. And now he needed a partner who could turn his galaxy far, far away into plastic toys. Lucasfilm first knocked on Mattel's door. Mattel, one of the biggest toy companies in the world. At that time, in the 1970s, Mattel was more into safe money when it came to their toys. They were known for their Hot Wheels line of die-cast cars, their world-popular Barbie line.
Wow, she's real like me.
The one and only living Barbie.
So when Lucas pitched them Star Wars, they passed, as it was an unknown risk with no fan base. Then came Mego, the reigning king of 8-inch action figures. They had the world's greatest superheroes line. This was their crown jewel.
Superman, the Man of Steel.
At the time, Mego had the license to produce characters from Marvel and DC, with some of the most iconic superheroes that kids loved, dominating the boys' action figure market in the US. But what's interesting is they also produced the Star Trek and Planet of the Apes action figures.
Mego presents the Planet of the Apes action figures.
And these sold well, but they lost steam after a few years, and Mego looked at Star Wars as just another sci-fi fad. Mego would pass on creating action figures for Star Wars also. With Star Wars about to be released in May of 1977, George Lucas was running out of time. In April of 1977, Lucasfilm found Kenner. A smaller Cincinnati-based company known for toys like the Easy Bake Oven, Play-Doh, and the Spirograph.
Here's what you can do.
Wow!
Here's what you can do.
Wow!
A surprise spins out for you with Spirograph.
Kenner wasn't known as a powerhouse for action figures. In fact, compared to Mattel or Mego, they were much smaller, but a more experimental company. They did make the $6 million Man and Stretch Armstrong. Those and the other few toy lines that they did make laid the groundwork for what was to come. Kenner executives and a small select group of employees were given a private screening of Star Wars and knew. They just knew this was something different. The only problem that they had was time. And time was the one thing that Kenner did not have. The movie's release was 1 month away. Christmas of 1977 was just around the corner. The only thing that Lucasfilm could make in time would be board games and trading cards, which could hit shelves the same month Star Wars was released. But for the Kenner toys, Kenner had no toys in production. They weren't even in the design phase yet. Kenner's solution was brilliant. The only challenge was they had to get Lucasfilm and the marketing team over at Fox to buy in to what they were proposing. They were proposing an IOU to kids.
What?
It was a bold move. So for Christmas 1977, kids opened up a cardboard stand with a mail-in certificate that was the early bird package. So here's how it worked. Starting in November of 1977, only a month before Christmas, parents bought the certificate at stores. Kids would fill out this certificate and mail it in. And in early spring of 1978, Kenner would ship out 4 figures: Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, R2-D2, and Chewbacca. Can you think of that happening today? Usually movies would hit theaters and be forgotten about a month later. But Star Wars was different. Star Wars was still #1 at the box office. The certificate idea. It was unconventional, but it worked. Those early bird figures laid the groundwork for what would become the original 12. And the way the figures were designed were genius in themselves. Toy designer Jim Swearingen knew that vehicles and playsets were the key to having kids relive the experience of Star Wars. So Jim and the design team over at Kenner designed action figures that would fit playsets and ships perfectly, taking inspiration from Fisher-Price's Adventure People, whose figures had a large amount of playsets and vehicles to roam in. Kenner's first wave of 12 figures hit shelves in 1978. Luke Skywalker is one of the most iconic action figures of all time. The figure featured his bright yellow hair, white tunic, and the now iconic double telescoping lightsaber, a fragile mechanism that slid out of his arm like a tiny plastic periscope. This was later changed to the single telescoping lightsaber later that year. The big thing that fans noticed was that his lightsaber was yellow. And toy designer Jim Swearingen said that they did this to differentiate the lightsabers between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. Luke was one of the top sellers of the entire line. No surprise for the film's hero. Next came Princess Leia Organa, dressed in her white gown with a vinyl cape and sporting a tiny black Leia blaster that kids constantly lost. The cape, as all the vinyl capes of these toys, was easily torn and hard to find in clean condition today. This was one of the worst sellers early on in the Kenner action figures. But as the Star Wars phenomenon grew, Leia became a key character in kids' adventures. And in collector circles today, original Leias in pristine condition fetch a pretty good price. Chewbacca was one of the tallest figures in the toy line, towering over Luke and Leia, with a detailed bandolier sculpted right into the figure. His bowcaster was a unique accessory mold that clipped right into his hand. And the first version of Chewie came with a translucent green version, which was later replaced with the blue-black version for his card back. And although you couldn't turn his head, Chewie's friendly but fierce presence made him a consistent seller throughout the toy line's run, and this figure would remain the same until Hasbro would release a new figure in the 1990s. R2-D2 was iconic. Unlike the other figures, he was sold as a solid little plastic cylinder with a chrome dome head that rotated with a satisfying click. The body featured a paper sticker for the droid's detailing. Devastating to kids who put this in their bathtubs and left this outside in the rain. And today, many R2-D2s have peeling or discolored labels, making pristine versions on the top of collectors' wish lists. This first figure came with no extra accessories, although future iterations of R2 would. He was one of the heroes, and he sold like crazy. Han Solo was first sculpted with what collectors now call the small head, but the designers over at Kenner thought the head didn't fit the body. So later that same year, Kenner retooled the figure with the larger head, giving Han a more proportional look. His blaster was made to look like the one he carries in the film, but still easy to lose and a headache for modern collectors trying to complete their figures, although this accessory, it won't set you back a lot. Han sold very well throughout the toy line's history, propelled by Ford's breakout star power. And that's one thing that made kids ask for these figures at birthday parties or Christmas time. If it was an interesting and well-written character, brought to life by an insanely talented actor, kids felt that and gravitated towards that. Something that's been lost, I think, in today's movie crossover to action figures. Darth Vader came with a black vinyl cape and his own double telescoping lightsaber at first. And yes, this was eventually replaced with the single telescoping version, and finding this version of Vader on his original card back, or even loose, is all but impossible these days, with this figure recently on card setting auction records. So if you have one, consider yourself lucky. This figure's design was simple but effective, and I can remember cherishing the day I got my Darth Vader. Even though my original doesn't have the cape or saber, it was the one that gave me years and years of imagination at play. Vader was a strong seller from the start and remains one of the most visually striking figures in the line. And the Darth Vader action figure's design would remain the same for all original trilogy movies until Hasbro would update it in the 1990s. Obi-Wan Kenobi shared the same telescoping saber gimmick as Luke Skywalker and Vader, with early double telescoping variants being especially coveted today. The lightsaber would get replaced in late 1978 with the single telescoping version, and just like Vader, this figure, loose or carded with the double telescoping feature, is almost impossible to find today, and on card has also set auction records. Kenobi wasn't the most popular figure in the lineup, and the figure's likeness was, well, let's just say minimalist. But with his brown vinyl cape and elegant blue saber, he gave kids the Jedi mentor they needed to create their own stories. And Ben has become a staple in any collection these days. Just like R2-D2, kids gravitated to C-3PO, the galaxy's most anxious protocol droid.
The reactors will be destroyed for sure. This is madness.
And these two were a breath of fresh air to how robots were perceived in movies, both being portrayed by real actors and given human-like qualities that translated into kids wanting this on their toy shelves. C-3PO was cast in shiny gold plastic, giving the figure a metallic sheen that stood out on toy shelves. But that glossy finish came with a downside: scuffing. These C-3PO figures show wear quickly, especially in how loose the arms and legs can be. Kids just played with these a lot, which is how it should be, making mint C-3POs highly sought after today. And although he didn't come with any accessories at first, 3PO's unique sculpt and metallic look made him a visual standout in the first wave. The Stormtrooper's figure was pure army building gold, and kids wanted more than one because in the movies, there were legions after legions of them. The Kenner Stormtroopers came with the classic blue-black Imperial blaster. The white plastic often yellowed over time, making bright white examples that haven't been bleached prized today. And just like Chewbacca, the Stormtroopers could not turn their heads, which is a good explanation of why they couldn't hit their targets. And as for kids in 1978, nothing was more fun than putting their Luke and Han against a squad of Stormtroopers. One of the more unusual entries in the first 12 was the Death Squad Commander, a generic Imperial officer with a gray jumpsuit and a black dome helmet that easily gets scuffed. It would later get renamed Star Destroyer Commander for the Empire Strikes Back figures because, parents didn't want to buy their kids a toy that was part of a Death Squad. I still call this figure Death Squad Commander to this day. He came with the same blue-black Imperial blaster as the Stormtrooper. And while not as flashy as Vader, this figure added depth to Imperial ranks on toy shelves and a great army builder. The Jawa. When I was a kid, I loved this figure. It was just one of the strangest characters in Star Wars, with the voice and the mystery of what the heck they look like underneath.
Dated a Jawa for a while. They're quite furry. Very furry.
This unassuming little scavenger has one of the most legendary stories in Star Wars collecting. The earliest Jawas were released with a vinyl cape, just like Vader and Obi-Wan, but Kenner quickly decided that the vinyl cape made the figure feel too cheap for its price, and that parents wouldn't justify paying the same price for a smaller action-size figure as they would with a bigger one. They switched to a soft goods cloth cape almost immediately. That means, for collectors, vinyl cape Jawas are incredibly rare, with original carded examples fetching astronomical prices today. And I have heard stories that the capes were switched out due to them being choking hazards, but I spent months, yes, months, trying to uncover anything that could back that story up. So if you have that piece of info, please send it my way, and let's clear up the mystery of the vinyl cape Jawa. The final action figure in the original 12, the Sand People. Although in 1983, the name would change to Tusken Raider. Kenner paired him up with a unique gaffy stick accessory and a tan vinyl cape. And the figure sculpt, with its textured mask and bandoliers, it captured the eerie look of the Tuskens perfectly. And for kids recreating Luke's journey through the Tatooine wastes, no figure was more essential. The first 12 sold so well that Kenner jumped into production on the next wave, which would complete the action figures of the first Star Wars movie. The success of Kenner's Star Wars line revolutionized the way that companies thought about toys. Before Star Wars, toys often inspired TV shows. After Star Wars, entertainment and toys became inseparable. Hasbro launched G.I. Joe, a real American hero, in 1982, pairing a toy line with a cartoon and comics to tell an epic, serialized story that sold millions of figures. Mattel followed suit with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, powered by animating storytelling and comic books. And then came Hasbro's Transformers, imported from Japan with no character backstory, but supercharged by a comic series and a cartoon in US markets that propelled this toy line to superstardom. And what happened to Mego after they said no to the Star Wars line? Well, in 1982, Mego filed for bankruptcy. And in 1983, the Mego Corporation ceased to exist. Every toy company across the world would look to Star Wars to set the new playbook on how to market toys. The initial run of Star Wars toys from the first movie would go on to sell over 200 million worth of toys. But Star Wars just didn't sell toys. It was based on a perfect movie that transported kids to a galaxy far, far away. And if you had your own Star Wars toys in your hands, you could make whole new stories yourselves. For collectors, these 12 action figures aren't just toys. They're time machines. Every accessory, every card back, every paint variant tells a story. Not just of a galaxy far, far away, but of a moment when the toy industry changed forever. From telescoping sabers to vinyl capes, from mass production to childhood imagination, these figures laid the foundation for modern collecting, and their legacy lives on in every convention, every display case, and every collector's memory of opening that first figure in 1978. These are the original 12, the toys that made Star Wars, and the toys that changed everything. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.